Are you looking for valuable business advice to reach that 7-figure revenue mark? Do you want actionable tips to properly navigate through every business challenge you encounter along the way? Let Tersh Blissett and Josh Crouch be your guide in getting you to the top here at Service Business Mastery. Tune in as they sit down with world-renowned authors in business, leadership, and personal growth who share valuable insights about management, marketing, pricing, human resources, and so much more. Let their nuggets of wisdom gold guide you in owning a thriving, profitable, and ever-growing business. Here are your hosts, Tersh and Josh.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. Hope you're having a wonderful day. You're listening to or watching the Service Business Mastery podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tersh Blissett, sitting virtually next to my co-host, Joshua Crouch. Today, we have a good friend of mine on the show, Shelby. And
she's apparently not a good friend of mine, so it's fine.
Nope, just mine. So, yeah, she wouldn't even know who you were. So, yep, sucks to suck. But
I say that to the kids all the time. I always tell them, it sucks to suck, doesn't it?
Yeah, yep, sucks to be Josh. No, Shelby and I met a long time ago, like a year ago, or it feels like it's probably been 2 weeks, but it feels like a year ago. No, she has a platform, a program for a heat load calculation, and it's a client experience in general. Like, it's really cool. It uses a lot of really fancy technology, stuff that I don't know anything about, that it's bringing heat load technology calculations to the forefront and making it more of making it a lot easier for technicians and comfort specialists to do this on a regular basis. And so you're not guessing on the equipment size prior to doing the job. So like I've seen it done in like 2 and 3 minutes. So it blows my mind because I've done
even what you're saying is
stuff.
It's so easy, even you can use it.
Yeah. Somebody's got jokes.
I do.
Yeah, it is a lot easier. It's a lot easier than a regular the old school, heat load calculation. Like I remember whenever I got my state exam, I did my state exam and I had the ACCO big book, and it was open book test, but you still had to know how to do it. And that was a grueling heat load calculation on a house that had 4 glass walls in the middle of the desert. That was terrible.
Of course it did.
But yeah, I'm super excited to have Shelby on the show. We actually booked this call a long time ago, but she's been very patient and willing to wait to be on the show. So Josh, you have anything you want to add before we get started?
Oh, I'm ready to get started.
Welcome to the show.
Hello. It's good to be here. I was jamming out a little bit to that music.
Well, Shelby, apparently you and I got to talk more because we're not friends.
I was shocked by that news, Tersh, that you just broke to us, but I would consider us friends, Josh. You, me, Brittany, Julie, Tersh, we're all friends.
Yeah. So I got a question for you, Shelby. How does a penguin build its house?
I honestly, I don't know.
It glues it together. Igloo?
So Shelby, it's funnier for me not to warn people, but Tersh cleaned out his office like 2 weeks ago, and he found these like dad joke things. So now he just randomly that's why I said don't ask me one of those stupid dad joke things.
My kids give me these things for Christmas and every other holiday.
Regular jokes are really bad.
New material. It's inspirational, really. I now want a joke book.
Whatever. Tell us about yourself. You were in Boston for a while. MIT, is that right? Or is it you? Because you were all over the place. So.
That is correct. That's actually the easiest way to summarize it. Is I've been all over the place. I think I've lived in like 8 cities in the last decade. I did live in Boston. The weather, I can't handle weather, so I actually have lived in Florida for the last couple of years, and I'm staying here because I really can't do winter. but had previously met my co-founder in Boston through our broader educational networks where we attended Stanford. And so we have been all over the place geographically as well. But I am now a proud Florida resident. Winter is not.
Snowbirds for the win.
That's also nice. Yes.
So why Conduit Tech? Why get into this industry? Because I loved you and I had, because it took me completely off guard whenever you and I, like, you called me and we were talking and I was like, okay, like let's talk about this. Like, this is a confusing conversation for me because I'm not used to people asking me about this stuff. So I really, it took me off guard, which was pretty cool. Explain to everybody why do what you're doing.
Absolutely. So, hi everyone, I'm Shelby, one of the Conduit. My co-founder Marissa and I started Conduit formally and officially 2 years ago as a company, but have been working together for over 3 years. And we started the company after just a year of learning about the industry. We interviewed hundreds of contractors, utility companies, homeowners, manufacturers, distributors. We interviewed anyone who would spare their time to talk to us about what can we do to accelerate residential energy efficiency. That was our initial question. And we were both working. I was working in industrial energy efficiency. She was working in agriculture. And we were trying to figure out how can we figure out a way to support small businesses in winning more business, growing their ticket sizes, help homeowners generate real comfort inside their home, and ideally save on their utility bills, and then also support our grid stability over the long run. And the deeper that we dove into this question, the clearer the answer was, which everybody who's listening in right now is like, yes, I can't believe it took you guys a year to figure this out. But the answer was like, it's really hard, especially from the perspective of a small business owner, to drive and sell high efficiency HVAC equipment, whether it be a heat pump, whether it be a higher SEER unit. It's hard to explain the benefits of that to a homeowner. And it's hard to do all of the work. There's the first question of, can you sell it? The second question of, actually, do those savings exist in reality once installed? Or do you have to rip out the entire ductwork system to actually get there? And the more we learned, the more we realized how challenging this upcoming transition, all of the changes that are happening in the industry are going to be. And we wanted to find ways to support contractors to navigate both this transition, but also support them in their everyday workflows. Because the more we learned about the workflows, the more we learned how much unbillable work there is, how much time is being invested into each customer site visit, each sale, each install. And a lot of homeowners just don't appreciate or understand the kind of value and service that's being delivered. So that's where we started focusing in, is like this mega area of how do we help contractors continue to deliver the quality results they're committed to, help them do so more efficiently and more profitably. And
so are you saying that with Conduit, you can, whether or not the actual efficiency is going to be the output before you install it?
That's a good question. Today, right now, and this yields a great segue into what we actually support. And so what our platform enables today is we use LiDAR imaging in the back of iPads to scan a home, build out a 3D model, a 2D floor plan, and a load calculation, all in 15 minutes or less. And the whole goal of that is to build a customer engagement experience, an experience that your customers can see what you're doing, see this full process that comes into designing the right solution for the home, and determine the right capacity for that equipment. And then with that, using that load calculation, you can have a conversation about, here's what you have installed, here's what we're recommending. And by the way, this is what your ductwork supports, or this is what, here are the broader improvements that you can do to your home. If you change these levers, let's say we add more insulation into the ceilings or the walls, this is the impact that this would have on your load calculation. So that's what the platform enables today. We continue to build out more features to help communicate those key sources of value that can help paint the picture and help explain, this is why this is going to be the right solution for your home. But that was the initial product that we've released into the market, was designing a really customer interactive load calculation experience that's also fast and enables really anyone to do it.
You have to use something like a TrueFlow grid in order to be able to determine what the ductwork will handle, or because does it do manual D also?
Not today.
Okay.
But what and frankly, it would be amazing if somebody has the TrueFlow grid available and is able to run their analysis and determine what their ductwork is actually capable of today. Right now, that's separate from what we do in the platform, but is
Okay.
really incredible if that can be done. And I think what we started with in terms of our release to market was a load calculation platform, which I can officially say is finally ACA certified. And we wanted to start with that first product, really perfect it for our users. And what we'll continue to do over the next forever, because software, it turns out it's never done. We're constantly improving and releasing new features. And so we'll continue to listen. What would be the most useful for folks to have in the field to be able to deliver those results they want to for their customers?
Yeah, I think that's the challenge with any software business, right? Like, I think people think, oh, it'd be nice to run a software business, right? Because it's
SaaS,
yeah,
it's a piece of cake.
well,
I want
SaaS,
to get rich.
you get the recurring residual money and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, you realize how many feature requests that SaaS companies get on a daily, if not like hourly basis, especially as they get bigger and more widely adopted. You go into those things, there's hundreds.
Hey, you
thousands.
do manual J's. Why don't you do manual D? I mean, geez.
We get a lot. We get a lot of requests, and we actually, it's funny, we have an incredible design team that has set up a structure for the folks, for myself, our team members who support on sales and customer success. And one thing that we do is on every conversation, we're adding like 5 to 10 lines to the spreadsheet of things that have been asked for, or things that we've observed. And sometimes it's, what they'll do is they'll take a look at what are people asking for? And then they'll look at, well, what's the root cause of this? Are they asking for it because this is too difficult as it is in the platform today? Or are they asking for this because this is like a real meaty piece of their workflow that we're not adequately serving? And so we see all kinds of pieces of feedback, but it's also really cool to see the themes come together and see common things being requested, which frankly determines a lot of what we build out as we go.
So how many times do people request things just because that's just the way they've always done it? Like, it's a completely useless task, but they just like, yeah, that's how my grandpappy taught me how to do it, so that's how I have to do it.
Nobody's referred to their grandpappy on any of these calls, unfortunately. But I'd be there.
People are missing
haven't been
opportunity
so
there.
many. I know there really is, but there hasn't been as many requests for things that we don't find useful. And I think that's also something that for us, we have a lot of trust in the pros that we work with. We think we work with some of the best teams across the country. And when they're telling us what they're doing, it's based off of, what they're actually doing on site. And that's one of the reasons our entire team goes on ride-alongs with contractors, is so that we can also observe. And sometimes people actually, they'll be doing something, we'll actually observe it and be like, actually, maybe that's something they could be doing inside of our platform instead of having to do manually or write that down in a separate platform. So I find that people are actually, it's interesting. People are far less likely to ask for something crazy than they're like, people are very respectful and kind, and they actually like don't want to hurt our feelings. But the kindest thing anyone can do is give us
but you do give off the persona. You're like, I'm such a nice person. Like, I don't want to say anything mean to Shelby because she'll get mad, and then I don't want to break her feelings, or and so like I won't say anything mean to her. But I'll wait for Josh. I'll say mean stuff to him.
I usually get all the negative feedback. I was gonna. So it's really interesting to me. So I'm listening to how you. I'm sorry. Was Marissa started the company? Like, you guys didn't even have a. I did.
See, you're not her friend because you would know that.
I guess we got to talk more. But I'm listening to how you guys started, or how you ladies started the company. And it wasn't even like, hey, we're going to design this thing because we see this as a need. You guys started by asking questions, just open feedback, and then literally built a SaaS company that does the same thing. You just keep asking questions, and you just keep getting feedback. And I think a lot of times businesses in general, we get to a point where like, wait, hey, we got this MVP thing here. We're good. We don't need any feedback on the product. It's good the way it is. And we kind of stop growing that way, or at least for a little while, and we worry about something else, and then maybe we come back to it later. I think it's an important point for anyone listening. It's like, because this relates to all businesses. It doesn't matter if it's software, marketing, contracting. Get feedback from your customers, because
or you build something and you say, well, you have to conform to the way that we do it.
Because maybe times change. I mean, look at the last, or I'll say 3 years. well, I guess COVID was started 4 years ago, but look at the last 4 years, how drastically we've changed. We went from a COVID
Crazy.
wave for 2 years to a post-COVID slump, and now all the shipment data is out from AHRI and all these other sources, and it's way down over the prior year. There's a lot of changes in a very short period of time, and that all the costs have gone up, all the labor costs have gone up, and then people aren't buying as much. Financing isn't as readily available.
Thank you for stating the obvious there, Josh. So let me ask you this here, Shelby. So has anybody given you the feedback that they just haven't spent the time doing a full-on, manual J, manual D on a home because they're afraid that their client will just give it to their competitor and then they can just, boom, use that information and they don't have to pull it? I mean, because I've experienced like doing it and like spending, 45 minutes to an hour doing it. And then, I wasn't thinking, just email it to somebody. And then I go there and I follow up with them and I see now my, prettied up little heat load calculation sitting on the table with like other people's proposals. And I'm like, I know exactly what happened here. I took all the time and did all this calculations and everybody else was just like, yeah, it's about that, right? That's good. They just trusted whatever I said.
Yeah.
Has anybody said anything
That
like
is not an uncommon fear. And I think part of that, a lot of people just say, yeah, we'll give you the load calculation if you do go with us. And they don't include that as part of their quote. And some folks that we work with, they do charge for the reports if the customer asks for them, and they say, absolutely, you can have these. If you go with us, it's free of charge. It's embedded as part of your, as part of this install. If you don't go with us, we're happy to charge you for the work that we put into getting these, and here you go. And I think either method is very valid because you are doing the work. You deserve to get paid for it in some way or another. And if that customer is choosing not to go with you, then but leverage the work that you did. That I think that's only fair. But I think that's been the main piece, is that people will choose not to share those as part of their quotes, but use it at the kitchen table to talk through why their quote is what it is, and not
So
a load calculation.
is this something that
That's
you
been the most common
could
approach
print
we've seen,
out,
for sure.
or do they keep it on their iPad?
Exactly. So the iPad version is definitely more interactive because you can play around with any of the variables while you're sitting there. You can play around with the 3D model, engage with it, which is what a lot of that LiDAR imaging is generating, is a 3D model that is a replica of the home on the interior and the exterior, but with all of the personal information like photos or the details of a bedspread. All of that is abstracted away. And so that 3D model you can play around with in the application, but you can also save everything and share it directly from the application.
Oh, so you're like sitting there at a table and you're like, oh, mother-in-law's getting ready to move in. Let's heat that load up a little bit because she's full of hot air. Or
you're adding on an addition to your home, you're adding insulation to your ceiling, especially in some of the northeastern states where there's some pretty insane weatherization programs. If you're going to make any of those changes, you definitely want to size to them. And so when you're having the conversation in the first place with the homeowner about, hey, do you have anything planned to change about your home? Being able to plan around that and show, hey, this is how it's going to impact your solution. We're going to want to size for the work that you're doing if that work is immediate. If it's not, let's also talk about what that's going to mean for your system.
Josh, didn't you love how she just took my off the wall comment and just like reeled it back in and was like, actually,
that makes me sound really not
let's
fun,
make this very professional.
Yeah, she definitely reeled it in because I don't know where you're going with that.
Hush, Josh. No, so like, how can you walk us through the process? Like, why is this that much easier to do than like, because like even I have an iPad Pro that I might have another software that, I still have to manually punch things in there, but, and we can only do this on our iPads, right? Is that because LiDAR technologies Is it on
Yeah,
a phone?
good
I
questions.
don't know.
Okay, so we'll start with the last one, which is LiDAR. Where is it available? So LiDAR is a common technology in a lot of different things, but in terms of the devices that we have every day, it is part of self-driving cars. But the devices that are applicable, so tablets and phones, which are things techs are already carrying, it's currently only available in Apple devices. That's just part of their technology. When they've been building out like that whole like headset thing that they've been doing, they're building out a lot of like how do they think about spatial areas, and they're using LiDAR as a piece of that. And so that's one of the reasons that Apple has doubled down in their devices, in the tablets and the iPhones, in their Pro models with those LiDAR sensors. So since 2020, 2021, all of the Pro models that they've released have had sensors, LiDAR sensors embedded in them. And so you have iPad Pros and iPhone Pros that have LiDAR as part of their devices already. And that's what that enables, is the ability to capture all of those dimensions as you're scanning a home, which leads to the first question about like, how does this all work? So right now, what you would do is you would take your iPad, and what you would do is you would start by creating a job, and you would create a job for an address. We're going to pull in property data right off the bat. That property data is going to help us determine what is either the right place to start for that project, or starting the job from a template. You can pull off in a template for your area, use that as a starting place to be able to determine here's the walls, windows, doors, floors, and ceiling types for this space. And then you can update all of those materials for that specific project. But you can always start with defaults as a good place to guide the what was common in 1950 in Savannah, Georgia. So that gets you your starting place of what are all your building materials. And then you move on to scanning. So when you're scanning, what you're capturing is you're just moving the camera up and down a little bit, and you're capturing the dimensions of the windows, walls, and doors. You're also capturing the orientation of the structure and matching those things together. So one of the most annoying parts of the Manual J, but also one of the things that really drives, especially your cooling gains, is the orientation of the home plus the size of your windows plus the material of the windows. So when you're scanning it and you've already set what your window type was and you scanned it and got the orientation, we're now matching all of those things for you together. So our goal is to take away the manual part of the Manual J, but still leverage the thing that only the tech in the home has, which is the knowledge about that construction type of that home. And so it becomes more about updating, taking a scan, and then delivering the results based off of your work inside the home, but dramatically shortening that time and other for you.
Tiptoed around a point that I'd like to bring up. And that is that it's not so simple that just anybody can do it. Like you still are going to need some technical knowledge. So like your average homeowner isn't going to like, hey, let's download this app and scan this house, because we still are going to have to put some information and calculations in. But with that being said, do we have to like, it's a rule of thumb that you have to take this amount of percentage off or blah, 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 blah. You might not have ever heard this stuff, but I've heard like the percentages here and like, oh, you're going to do it over here. You have to take this percentage off. You're going to spray foam.
That sounds really
this is the different percentage.
that percentage stuff we don't need to worry about because you can update that in the tool. But you're right. I think there is a level of knowledge that we think the average technician has, but maybe the average homeowner doesn't. And right now, our users and the people we're building this for are folks who have some HVAC background. They might have 2 weeks of experience, they might have 2 months, they might have 2 years. But our goal is that if you can identify, is this home on a slab, a crawl space, or a basement, that's sort of the level of knowledge that we expect a lot of our users to have. So I think it might, frankly, in some cases be one step beyond homeowners, but our goal is for this to be really accessible, but it does require a little bit of work. And I think that's what we think is necessary to get the accuracy that we want to deliver on.
As far as, so you mentioned, creating a job, and Tersh and I love our automation. Is there any sort of integrations with field service management software, things like that, that once let's say an estimate gets created in the system where we know we're going to want to run the load calc software, we can automatically create a job and get some of that customer data in the tool?
That is a great question, and I can tell you is something in progress that we are working on building now. Is integrations, because the point that you're making here is like there's so much like duplicate work that can happen, and we want to avoid that. Right now, our workaround is we pull in the property data on our own and pull it in automatically for the users, so that they don't have to pull it in directly from Service Titan or wherever. But we want this to be a seamless experience. And so we're talking and working on integrations now.
Okay. So when it pulls in the information, is it like the other platforms that we know about that's like kind of iffy about what kind of information it pulls in?
I'll tell you what we pull in.
Talking about,
and you can be, yes, you can be the judge. So the information that we pull in is going to be property data, which, as you know, is spotty. It certainly is. It's not perfect, right? And that's one of the reasons that we don't want to rely on property data to be able to inform what's the square footage of the home, what's the square footage of the windows, the basements, things like that. And that's where the scanning really comes into play to fill the gaps of property data. Property data can tell you the year it was built, the number of bedrooms. Those things tend to work fairly well. The second thing that we pull in automatically for our users is ASHRAE design data. So we pull in based off of the location that user is in, where that address that they plugged in. We pull in the nearest weather station, all the corresponding design conditions for that location. Exactly. And so that piece is definitely a good source of data, though there are certain local climates, for example, places with all kinds of strange altitude things. My heart goes out to the people in Colorado who are constantly trying to figure out what their right design conditions are. But that is another source of data that we pull in, that we mirror. And then the third piece of data that's frankly the most important, and I think one of the key drivers of our accuracy, is going to be the LiDAR data that we're pulling in, the orientation data that we're pulling in, and what that enables us to get relative to platforms that determine without some sort of scanning functionality, is that gets us the windows, their orientation, the doors, their orientation, and then the surface areas of all of that structure on each story, as well as how many stories, which ones are conditions, which ones aren't, what's below grade, what's not.
And what's the below the branches of the trees that's hiding the roof of the house?
Shading, polarizing views on shading. I know this is not something that maybe everybody spends time thinking of. Some people feel very strongly about having the ability to add shading onto, where a tree is, but some people would argue that that tree might get cut down. Which is just
or we could have a random hurricane. Hello, Savannah.
That's also
Florida.
A sad approach.
This is why living in Arizona.
Neither of those are good
great.
situations.
We don't have trees even that tall, so we don't have to worry about it. It's just sunny all the time, so you just build it for 115 degrees and you're fine.
It's just dry. It's just dry all the time.
Dry and hot.
So I was going to say something, but then something more funny caught my mind, and my squirrel brain just went, squirrel.
I was going to say now.
Shoot. I did. Dang it. I even knew it when I was saying that.
This is why he writes stuff down in his little notebook.
No. Don't start talking, Josh. So how are we the like roof material and stuff like that? Like that's all stuff we manually put in, and like insulation, that can be human error, correct?
That can be. So we give defaults to start off with, and the defaults are set as, we give defaults as part of templates. We advise people to update the templates based off of their areas, but we've worked with local building scientists to talk about, what is actually the reality of what was installed for a pre-1955 home. There is what code says, but what you find is in later years, buildings start to match code a little bit better. So starting in like 2010, you can actually go off of code to drive that. But before that, it's a little bit more challenging. And I think the biggest challenge is, of course, homes that have been weatherized pretty aggressively, which you're going to see more in New York and Massachusetts, where they have a lot of weatherization programs targeting that. That's where home evaluation is going to be the most important, the most important to check out what is different relative to the year that home was built. But we obviously encourage always checking whether there's attic insulation, whether there's insulation in the walls if you can. Those are two really important drivers. And the most important thing is there insulation? And that, because it's an inverse curve, rather than is it, R38 or is it R39? It's more, is there R0 or is it, R5 or R20? So it's that, I think, is the biggest piece, which we find that especially in the areas where there is a lot of changes to those homes over time because they're older homes, we find people are very comfortable evaluating and making sure that they're selecting the right thing, because there's just been so much of
we
that
talked about
effort
the
in their
skill level
communities
for
in
this stuff.
the
You still
past.
need to know enough. Like, you can't take a used car salesman off the street who has no idea about structures of home, give them the technology, and expect that you're going to get a great output without at least a couple of weeks of training on what these things are, what to look for in your area. But it's nice to know.
By the way, Shelby, I like what you did there. Whether or not, whether
This is
like a little
Shelby. This is why we don't do podcasts
no pun
in the
intended.
afternoon, because Tersh gets like he gets real loopy in the afternoon.
So
Are you on your meds?
you mentioned the shush. Probably not.
Julie,
They skipped today. That's why we do Wednesdays, not Tuesdays. Josh. You mentioned high efficiency and whether or not it'll work and stuff like that. How do we know that using the program? Like, how are we going to know if it's worth buying the XV20 versus an XR14 or XR15?
The XR14 being like
low efficiency, the minimum SEER rating efficiency.
That's
versus
a good question.
Like
the efficiency of the equipment, whether it's going to pay off. Yeah, I mean, for us today, we don't model that in the platform, but it is a really good question. I think that's one of the directions that some of our users have been pushing us towards, is how can we help our customers understand energy savings as well?
Because there's nothing worse for me as if I'm selling a system and I'm like, hey, you should spend the extra money to get this very nice and efficient system that's going to make you more comfortable. I rarely ever go on the energy saving side of things. I go towards the comfort levels. Like that's where I'm selling towards, is comfort, especially where we're located. It is very humid, and so the variable speed and all that dehumidification is very helpful versus trying to sell on the energy side, because I've done that a couple of times and they're like, my electric bill didn't go down, it went up. I'm like, oh crap, I don't know if I did this right or not. And come to find out, there were some other things that weren't my fault, like they were closing vents and stuff. I mean, it was weird stuff, and we got it all situated. But I remember thinking very vividly, like, I am never going in up there and telling somebody you're going to save money if you put this expensive air conditioning unit in.
We heard that very consistently, which is one reason we didn't prioritize building something around that, because there are so many factors that drive whether that person is going to save money on energy. One being energy prices, which you have literally no control over. But two, the second just being the consumer behavior changes. You've now enabled them to have more comfort inside their home. And now they're taking advantage of it and they're going like crazy. And they're like, oh, for the first time, I can actually get these rooms to this level, and it's not so outrageous. It's not adding that much to my electricity bills, but of course it's adding something because they're now dropping their thermostat to the level that they always wanted to, or whatever it is. And humans are funny creatures, and so
now I'm gonna bundle up and turn the temperature down. So then I have to put a big old blanket on every night during the winter time, during the summertime.
Yeah.
Instead, before you would be like, oh, I'll just use a sheet instead, because
for sure
be humid. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Do you have a way? I don't know this at all. Like I have no clue. So you might not do any of this stuff. So, the rebates and that type of thing, like, do you have any kind of like tracking metric in there? Because the problem with it is it's so different in different states and different counties and different electrical municipals and all that good jazz. Like, so do you have something like that?
Rebate programs are wild. That is a very correct summary. And there are 160 programs run at a local level in like 15 states. And then there's, of course, all the pieces that nobody can keep track of. And it's pretty insane what's being required in a lot of these programs. One of them being a ACA certified manual J, which is now in our favor in a lot of states. But right now, that's the number one way we help with rebates, is being able to provide easier documentation around a correct load calculation sizing. There's actually a ton of quality bid programs out there popping up now where contractors are getting paid to put together great quality work as a proposal. So running a full load calculation is something like in the state of California, there's a quality bids program paying contractors like $350 just to do the bid. They don't need to sell the work, but just to do the bid. And so there's some interesting things that are popping up here that we are excited to enable with our load calculation functionality. And then what we're asking is every contractor that we work with in those regions where we know they're members of these utility programs, we're asking them, what else do you want from us to support you in filing this? Because it can create a lot of back office work. The main challenge is it's not necessarily creating work for the salesperson, but it's often creating something for somebody else. And so we have to start asking more and more team members to make sure, for you, to make sure that we're helping navigate that, because it can be a lot of money. And it can
comfort specialist sells something that expired 6 months ago.
California is so messed up.
Are you serious?
$350 to put together a bid using this.
And then complain about the tax.
They wonder why they can't afford anything.
But it's a beautiful state.
It is to visit, not to live in.
It's like Savannah.
Oh man.
Oh man, good job, Josh. Good job. There's one weird one with the Georgia Power. You can it was a weird rebate that I might be wrong. So erase Georgia Power from your mind. It's somewhere around here. And you had to do a blower door test on the home before you replace the system and then do another one after the fact. But nobody, when it first was starting, nobody knew that you had to do it before. And so they weren't doing any kind of testing beforehand. And then afterwards, they were trying to get like a $750 rebate for sealing ductwork, I think is what it was. And there was like a before and after. It was just, man, I felt so bad. Like whenever everybody I talked to about it, the homeowners that were dealing with it, I was like, sometimes I just feel like, if you want to do the rebate program, you do the rebate program, but just count me out, because they make things so difficult to jump through these hoops. And then they're like, oh yeah, you can get this Nest or Ecobee thermostat for $75. And I'm like, $75? Like, that's cheap. Like, for real? Like, that's a scam. And then I get on Georgia Power's website and it's like, yeah, $75. Like, dang, I need to buy 25 of them. Like, nope, you only buy one for your house. Yeah, I could. It's like, way cheaper than I could. But anyway, this neither here nor there. But it would be nice to have some sort of database that could track what's available and what's not available, especially whenever Josh and I were talking to Chris Forth, and we've talked to him for the past year and a half, 2 years about
IRA.
The what's it called?
All the energy.
Yeah, that one.
DOE.
And that thing,
stuff like that. And then we talked about the refrigerant changes that are coming and stuff like that too.
Yeah, the DOE 2020. So, you're probably having to deal with that kind of stuff too, huh? With your load count, or is that
but it
not
is something
really that big of an issue?
As we think about helping people determine the right equipment and equipment selection, as all the equipment changes, that will be something that we have to tackle as all the refrigerants transition.
So many updates to keep track of.
So
many updates, so little time.
You should really be in politics, because you just you skate right around those things. Like, you just said the right things every time.
I'm actually kind of horrified that you just told me I should be in politics.
No, I didn't mean that in a bad way. I meant it in a good way. You're a good talker, because I would have just been like, they can do something else with this change in the stuff. So
I'm not the person installing the equipment, so I don't feel as fervently, but I do know that it is a lot of burden and a lot of changes that are being pushed on contractors.
I don't necessarily think it's the installation part of it. It's the fact that I am going to have an 18-wheeler full of equipment and stuff behind every van because of all the different refrigerants.
So, yeah, it used to be carry two. You had 22 and then 410A when 410A came out. That's when I came into the industry. It was like everything was changing over to 410A. So we had 22 and 410. Now it's like I can't even keep track of all the numbers. Like I don't. Someone says refrigerator, especially now that I'm out of it. I'm like, I have no. Like, great, that's cool. I have no idea. It's R32 and it's like 438A or some ridiculous thing. I can't keep track of all of them. I'd like Tersh to do that. He probably doesn't know.
Obviously, I'm terrible at it because I can't remember the question I was about to ask. Yeah. Hey, what's orange and sounds like a parrot? Come on, you got this. Orange sounds like a parrot.
I do not have this.
You got it. It's a carrot.
That's not bad, there.
Conduit.tech, right?
Conduit Tech, exactly. Our website, if you're looking for that, is getconduit.com.
Getconduit.com. Thank you for hanging out with us.
Thank you for having me.
And putting up with Josh.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Service Business Mastery. Now that you are equipped with essential business advice from this impactful conversation, you are one step closer to becoming the successful owner of your dreams. If this episode has been helpful to your business journey, don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and share it with other owners as well. Visit servicebusinessmastery.com to learn more.